So you're just getting started in woodworking. You're watching videos, reading articles, trying to soak up all the information you can. It's a great way to learn, but there's a problem. A lot of the common advice out there, the stuff you hear over and over, is actually doing more harm than good. It sounds right, it feels right, but it's quietly setting you up for failure. You follow the steps, you do what you're told, and then your project just doesn't come out the way you pictured. It's frustrating, and it makes you think you're the one doing something wrong, when really, the advice was the problem from the start. I remember this one time, early on, I was building a set of cabinets. I'd heard you need to clamp everything down as tight as you can possibly get it, so I did. I cranked those clamps until my knuckles were white and the wood was groaning. I thought, this thing is gonna be bulletproof. The next day, I took the clamps off, and the joints were weak. You could practically pull them apart with your hands. All that pressure had squeezed out nearly every drop of glue, starving the joint. It was a huge setback, and it made me realize I had to start questioning the rules and figure out what actually works in the real world, in my own shop. That's what this video is all about. We're going to break down 5 pieces of common woodworking advice that you need to stop following right now. These are the tips that sound good in theory but cause major headaches in practice. We're going to look at why they don't work and what you should be doing instead. My goal here is to save you the frustration I went through so you can spend less time fixing mistakes and more time building things you're proud of. Let's get into it. Alright, let's talk about sanding. The advice you always hear is sand everything as smooth as glass. People get obsessed with it. They work their way up through the grits, 80, 120, 220, 320, maybe even higher, on every single surface before they even think about assembly. It feels productive, right? You're making the wood feel amazing. But here's the thing, when it comes to the parts you're going to glue together, all that extra sanding is actually ruining your joint. You're making the surface so slick, so polished, that the glue has nothing to grab onto. It can't penetrate the wood fibers the way it needs to. Think of it like trying to glue 2 pieces of polished marble together. It's just not going to hold. Wood glue works by creating a mechanical bond, seeping into the pores and fibers of the wood, and locking the 2 pieces together. When you sand a surface with a high grit, you're essentially closing off those pores. You're burnishing the surface, making it too smooth and non-porous for the glue to get a good grip. You end up with what's called a starved joint. Not because you used too little glue, but because the glue couldn't do its job. It's sitting on the surface instead of getting inside it. So what's the solution? It's simple. For any surface that's getting glued, the edges of a panel, the faces of a mortise and tenon, anything like that, stop sanding at 120 or 150 grit. That's it. That grit range leaves the surface clean and ready for glue, but with enough texture, enough open pores, for the glue to really bite in and form a powerful bond. Save the superfine sanding for the show surfaces, the parts you're actually going to see and touch, and do it after the glue up is done and the clamps are off. Your joints will be 10 times stronger for it. This next one gets a lot of people. You go to the big box store, you pick out a nice-looking board, and you assume it's ready to use. The edges look straight, the faces look flat. The factory has to make them square, right? That's one of the biggest myths in woodworking. You can't trust a factory edge, ever. Those boards have been shipped, stacked, stored in warehouses with changing humidity. They've had a long, hard life before they ever get to your workshop. 9 times out of 10, they are not perfectly straight, flat, or square. Relying on that factory edge is a recipe for disaster. If you try to glue up a panel using those edges, you're going to have gaps. You'll clamp it down, and you'll see these little hairline cracks where the boards just don't meet up perfectly. If you use that edge as a reference to make other cuts, you're just transferring that error to every other piece of your project. It's a chain reaction of inaccuracy. Your joinery won't fit right, your boxes won't be square, and your tabletops will have ugly gaps. It all starts with trusting that one edge that was never reliable to begin with. So, the first thing you do with any board that comes into your shop is check it and true it up. Get yourself a good, reliable straight edge and check for flatness and straightness on every face and every edge. Look for bows, cups, twists, and crooks. Once you know what you're dealing with, you need to establish one flat face and one straight 90-degree edge to reference everything else from. Whether you're using a joiner and a planer, or you're doing it with hand planes and a straight edge, this step is non-negotiable. It's the foundation of everything you build. Don't let a bad start ruin a good project. We've all seen it, the picture of a project with a dozen clamps on it, tightened down with everything the person's got. It looks impressive. The thinking is that more pressure equals a stronger joint. It's just intuitive. But like I said in the intro, this is the exact mistake I made. And it's one that can completely undermine your work. When you clamp a joint as hard as you possibly can, you're not making it stronger. You're actually squeezing almost all of the glue out from between the two pieces of wood. You get a massive amount of squeeze out, which feels satisfying, but it's a sign that you've left the joint starved of the very thing that's supposed to hold it together. A good glue joint relies on a thin, consistent film of glue between the two mating surfaces. This film hardens and creates the bond. When you apply excessive clamping pressure, especially on a well-fitted joint, you can squeeze that film down to practically nothing. In some spots, you might even get wood-on-wood contact with no glue in between. This creates a weak, inconsistent bond that's prone to failure over time. It also puts a ton of stress on the wood fibers themselves, sometimes even crushing them, which can cause its own set of problems down the line. The goal isn't to apply the maximum possible pressure, it's to apply just enough. The sweet spot is when you tighten the clamps to the point where the joint closes up nicely and you see a small, consistent bead of squeeze out along the entire length of the seam. That little bead tells you that you have full glue coverage inside the joint, but you haven't forced it all out. It should look like a tiny frosting along the edge. Once you see that, stop tightening. Just snug is enough. It takes a little practice to get the feel for it, but a lighter touch will give you dramatically stronger and more reliable glue-ups. This is more of a mindset problem, but it has very real consequences for your projects. You're working on something, and you get a little dent or a scratch, or maybe there's some tear out from the planer, and a little voice in your head says, "It's fine, the finish will cover it." Or maybe you have some glue squeeze out that you didn't quite clean up, and you think a couple of coats of polyurethane will hide it. This is a trap. Finish doesn't hide flaws, it highlights them. It magnifies every single imperfection you left behind. Think about what a finish does. It creates a smooth, often glossy or semi-glossy surface that reflects light. Any little dent, scratch, or divot will catch that light differently from the surrounding area, making it stand out like a sore thumb. Glue smudges are even worse. Most finishes won't penetrate an area where wood glue has sealed the pores, so when you apply your stain or oil, you'll be left with a light-colored blotchy spot that screams, "Mistake." Trying to fix these problems after the finish is on is a nightmare. It usually means sanding everything back down to bare wood and starting over. The truth is, 90% of a great finish is great prep work. It's not about the brand of varnish you use or your fancy spray gun. It's about taking the time you open that can of finish. It means fixing dents with a little steam from an iron. It means sanding out every scratch, working your way through the grits methodically. It means meticulously cleaning up every bit of glue squeeze out before it dries. When you raise the grain with a damp cloth and sand it back one last time, that's prep. Your final surface should be as close to perfect as you can get it in its raw, naked state. Do the hard work then, and the finishing process will be easy, and the results will be stunning. In the age of social media, we see people cranking out amazing projects in 30-second reels. It creates this pressure to be fast, to be productive, to finish one thing and immediately start the next. A lot of beginners think that the key to staying motivated is to see quick results. So they rush. They rush their measurements, they rush their cuts, they rush their assembly. They think that if they slow down, they'll lose interest and abandon the project. In my experience, the exact opposite is true. Rushing is the fastest way to get frustrated and quit. When you rush, you make mistakes. It's inevitable. You misread the tape measure by a 1/16 of an inch. You cut on the wrong side of the line. Your joinery is sloppy, and things don't fit together. Now, instead of moving forward, you're stuck. You're either trying to figure out a complicated fix, or you're remaking the piece from scratch. All that time you thought you were saving by rushing is now spent on damage control. The project grinds to a halt, your motivation evaporates, and that half-finished build ends up collecting dust in the corner of your shop. Woodworking is a process. It's a craft that rewards patience and deliberation. You have to learn to slow down and enjoy the steps, find the satisfaction in laying out a perfect cut line, in making a clean, precise cut, in seeing a joint come together with no gaps. Put on some music, Get in the zone and focus on the task right in front of you, not the finished product. When you slow down, your accuracy improves, you make fewer mistakes, and the whole process becomes more meditative and enjoyable. And, ironically, by taking your time, you'll often finish the project faster because you won't be constantly backtracking to fix the errors you made in your hurry. So, there you have it. 5 pieces of advice you can officially ignore. Look, everyone makes mistakes. I still make them. It's a fundamental part of learning any craft, especially one as nuanced as woodworking. You're going to make a joint that's too loose. You're going to trust a factory edge when you shouldn't. You're going to sand a finish and find a glue spot you missed. It's going to happen. The key is not to get discouraged by it, but to learn from it. Each mistake is a lesson in what not to do next time. And those lessons are more valuable than any piece of advice you can read online. The goal isn't to be a perfect woodworker overnight. There's no such thing. The goal is to build your understanding, piece by piece, project by project. It's about learning to read the wood, to feel when a clamp is tight enough, and to know which rules are there to help you, and which ones are just holding you back. It's about developing your own process, your own intuition, in your own shop. Focus on enjoying the process of building and learning, and the quality of your work will naturally follow. Don't chase perfection, chase understanding. Now, I want to hear from you. What's a piece of woodworking advice you followed that turned out to be a total disaster? Or maybe you have a great tip for beginners that you had to learn the hard way. Drop it in the comments below. Reading through each other's experiences is one of the best ways we can all learn and get better together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.